Welcome to Trekommendations, a show that each week invites on a wonderful guest as we seek out some of the finest in Star Trek's expanded content. And joining me this week, we have a man who is all about giving Star Trek some ups and downs from TrekCulture. It's the fabulous Sean Ferrick.
Thank you very much for that lovely introduction. Wonderful and fabulous. I feel like the bar's up here. I'm gonna have to really work hard to try and hit that now.
Yeah, it's that, or I need to buy a thesaurus so I can find more more ways to describe my guests. Because no, of course, wonderful, fabulous. Welcome, Sean. Lovely to have you here. To actually sort of have you speak back when I'm commenting on the things you're saying, because normally, I'm just ranting to myself and I don't get a response. So it's quite nice that we'll actually have an exchange of a conversation today. Obviously, your opinions on Star Trek are quite well known because you have a show that's out there and people can hear what you think about all different series and episodes and so on and so forth. But just in case somehow they've missed all of that, I always like to start the show with some calibration questions just so we get a little glimpse into your tastes. Now, I know you're abroad at the moment, so I thought this might be a nice apt question. If you were going on holiday, what planet in the Star Trek universe would you most like to visit?
Ooh, I'm in a way I'm gonna be boring when I say Riser, but maybe not for the reasons people think. Because I'm a little bit closer to the Jean-Luc than I am to the Will Riker.
Right.
Um, I might put the Horgon out, but he might be lying down.
Okay.
You know, because I am someone, I have to say, if you give me a beach and a chair, that's a day sorted for me.
It's a good answer. It's an answer that is even better if people have listened to Tom's views on Riser recently on your show. So um, I thought, oh, this is quite a softball one. It'll be quite an easy answer if they say that. But then I was like, oh, but maybe Sean will say something else, and maybe he wants to go to, I don't know, experience some Klingon pain sticks or something. I don't know. I don't know what it's.
Listen, we've all been on Klingon bachelor parties. The path to Kalhaya is not one you soon forget.
But no, have a nice, relaxing day on Riser. You've earned it.
Thank,
Wonderful.
thank you very much. And also, actually, speaking of Klingons, as long as Worf doesn't show up with his eco-terrorist buddies, I'm never letting that drop. Never.
Yeah. I mean, they did, you know, people made some interesting decisions in Deep Space Nine. Let's just say that.
That they did. I would. Can you imagine if social media was a thing while DS9 was airing?
Yes. You see, you say that, and it makes me feel so old.
No, we're young. We're young, damn
We're
it.
young. We're young. Yeah. This might get clipped. It's unrelated, but I've bought a new uniform to replace
Ooh.
the grey, you know, uh, what was it, Insurrection DS9 uniform.
Mm.
Um, and I was thinking about it, like, when did I get the old one? I'm like, oh dear, like I was like 25 years ago. That can't be right. And then I start like running the numbers in my head, like, oh no, that is right. That's
How did you get one of those 25 years ago?
I want to say it was from like when Forbidden Planet used to have like a magazine that used to come out, and you could order stuff out of there.
Oh yeah, I do remember. Do you remember? Like, I hope this is all gold
This
content,
is
by the
this
way.
is going in now.
Brilliant. Okay. Do you remember that? Because I do remember that magazine, and I remember. So there is a Forbidden Planet, and there has been for a very long time in Dublin, right? And I used to live in Dublin, and so on a special treat, we would go in because I remember First Contact coming out. I remember seeing the toys. I remember seeing the Enterprise E and everything. But I remember vividly from that magazine the list of the micro machines in the back, right? And little younger Sean didn't realize there was such things as there's the sets they made a million of and the sets they made 1,000 of.
Right.
But of course, the magazine just listed them all. And I was like, brilliant, I'm going to go in and I'm going to get the HMS Bounty today, because wouldn't that be a wonderful mic? Oh my God, nobody can get the HMS Bounty. Okay, right now, I'm beginning to understand that this is a magazine of lies.
Yes. Yeah. It is a magazine of lies. Here's another, like, something that for some reason has stuck in the back of my mind forever, will not disappear, is they had all the different uniforms and the prices, and they had a Babylon 5 uniform for £5.
Nice.
And I was like, that can't be right. That can't be right. And we tried to get it, and they were like, no, 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 it was a misprint. No, we can't sell it for that much. I'm like, but you've put it there. I kind of feel like you've got to. No, 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 no. Was
I may not be a big country lawyer, but I think once you advertise
yeah.
something,
Then that's where if it was internet now, you just click purchase and it's on its way, right? Too late. Haha.
done.
Oh well. Anyway, let's need to recalibrate now. So let's back to our calibration questions, although we've learned a lot. Now, I'm not asking who is your favorite captain per se, but specifically, if you had to serve as the first officer, who would you want the captain to be?
Oh, oh, those are two different questions. Like, because my first answer would have been Cisco, but I'm not sure I want to be his first officer. What war crime shall we commit this week? And everyone knows I love DS9. It's my favorite. I think Janeway.
Yeah.
I think Janeway. I would like to be first officer under Janeway.
Awesome. You said off air you have a bit of a nomadic lifestyle. So launching yourself 70,000 light years away seems to
Doesn't seem like
fit
that much of a
perfect.
stretch, really.
Excellent. Why not? It's a good answer, and I'm glad that it was a different answer. That was the purpose of the question, and it's hit it. Very good. My last question for you. This is more specific to you. Your show is
Ooh.
famous for hearing people's hot takes on Star Trek. What is your favorite Star Trek hot take?
Oh, ooh. I don't know. I don't know. There's been ones that have been more interesting than others. Like one of our team said, "Hot take: Code of Honor not as bad as its reputation."
Right.
And I said, "You're gonna have to back that one up." And they kind of went on to explain, look, it's it's a decent Tasha Yar episode, and then the making of it, like, it wasn't in the script that all of the Ligonians were portrayed by African American people. That was a director choice, and I'm like,
Yeah. The
you're
novelization of the episode is really good. You just need that.
like there you go. Like I like that kind of a hot take. Not that I necessarily agree with it, but I like one that makes you think. There's hot takes
Yeah.
like, oh, I don't like Discovery. Grant, why? Urgh. That's not a hot take.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I want something that inspires discussion. I recently did one, which is Up the Long Ladder. Not as bad as its reputation. Like, is it the best representation of Ireland in Star Trek? No, Jason. No, it is not. But there's stuff in there that's good, and we've since had worse Irish representation in Star Trek. So, it's been knocked off that pedestal, I can give you that.
There you go. So in the end, that's always nice, isn't it? When you can say, well, it's not that bad. It's pretty bad. Let me present.
The wonderful thing about an ongoing franchise is that something is not always necessarily going to be the worst thing.
Exactly. What a positive way to look at it.
It's like pessimism or optimism, entirely up to you.
Yeah. Again, it's just, I would say a certain point of view, but that feels like it's another sci-fi franchise's catchphrase. So I'll just leave that. Just leave that outside. No, I like that. Fine. Fair enough. So hot takes that require discussion, deep discussion.
Mm.
And we'll put Code of Honor there as an example of that. Not that you necessarily agree with it. I'll just a little disclaimer there, just in case.
It's like, I don't necessarily recommend Code of Honor.
Very good. Thank you so much. We've got to keep the branding alive. Speaking of, I'm just going to add something to the screen for a second. So I don't know if you can see that. It's a clock because Sean, it's come to that time where I'm going to ask for your Trekommendation. We will get into it in more depth, but to begin, please, in 60 seconds or less, could you tell us what is your Trekommendation and why you've brought it to the show?
Okie dokie. My recommendation this week is the recent audio drama Star Trek Khan. There is a couple of reasons behind this. One is that I think it is a genuinely great story. I think it's well produced, well acted, well written. I think it's so. I'm going to put that aside for a second because with that is the idea that Star Trek is not limited to what we see on screen. Now, many people know this already. There's how many novels, how many comics, how many games. There is so many different versions of Star Trek out there. But this is one of the first times that, so I guess officially, they've, CBS, I don't want to say Secret Hideout, have leaned so heavily into this particular type of presentation of Star Trek. So Star Trek Khan is very much an experiment as much as it is a genuinely enjoyable series. I think it's an experiment that paid off, and I will discuss that throughout the episode.
Oh, I mean, that is spot on timing. Well done. People are getting so good with the with getting it. I mean, people are getting good in that they're finishing early. Some people just like to show off by really just hitting it on that 1 second. So, well done to
It's like
you.
if you've done enough news videos, you're like, I know how to stick to a timer.
Yeah. I had to do it myself for the Patreon episode we did where I review a Trekommendation. And the clock was put on me to review, to give my a gist of what it is in 60 seconds. It was fine. I don't know why everyone's complaining. It's easy.
Exactly. It's kind of, anyone can do it.
What was really hard were the calibration questions. That's what I struggled with. That's the bit I feel guilty about, What's the best episode of Star Trek in the whole franchise? And no one will judge you for your decision. Oh yeah, no, wonderful, love it. It's a great recommendation. Also convenient if you ever want to come back on and I do the review episode with you because I've heard it as well. So it's always nice. And you also justified the existence of this show within the 60 seconds by talking about the books, comics, games, the massive amount of content that is out there. If only there was a show that could help you navigate through and find the best of the best within. But I don't know. If someone thinks about making that show, let me know. And I've got a really good name for it if you think of it. Wonderful. I like that you're separating it into two different things as well. I'll start there. Let's start talking about Khan first of all, because I guess it's an interesting choice for their first foray into official audio drama. Good choice? Question mark?
I can see that the way you pronounce that, like written on a screen, like a question mark in the beginning and a question mark in the end. Good choice.
Yeah, like the Spanish way.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what do you think? You've reviewed every episode, and I think I very recently listened to. So, congratulations, everyone! I'm actually ahead on recording. This is very nice. But as of recording, you maybe yesterday or the day before released the final your review of the final episode. So I know you've had a chance to kind of from episode 1 and the concept to then it being fully fleshed out and getting the final kind of payoff, I suppose I would say. How do you feel about it as a choice of sort of their first attempt at doing something like this officially?
I think it was a smart choice because you will always have an issue when it comes to doing a prequel, or even it is by its nature a prequel because we know what happens after, but sort of a self-contained story. I know where we're going to get to and I know where we started, but we genuinely don't know what kind of happened on SETI Alpha 5. And Khan has always been one of the most popular characters in the Star Trek sort of not only pantheon of villains, but just Star Trek characters. A lot of people, I think, know Khan who might not necessarily know Star Trek as well. because he's just such a part of pop culture, and particularly Ricardo Montalban's Khan,
Mm.
which is like over the last year, maybe 2 years, I've been on a sort of a renaissance with Star Trek Into Darkness. I did not love it when it came out because I thought that is a remake of Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. And as time has gone on, I have softened considerably on it because it's a lot of fun. But Benedict Cumberbatch is actually great.
Mm.
Is he Khan? Okay, look, that's up to the viewer, but he's a great villain in the film. But bringing it back to the point, he is like, when I think of Khan, I think of Ricardo Montalban.
Hmm.
You know, that is the character from both Space Seed and The Wrath of Khan.
Yeah.
And so he was, in a way, a bit like, if there's a new toy line coming out, you have a 50-50 chance it's going to be next gen or original series. You know, it's probably going to feature Kirk and Spock, you know, because everyone knows them. And in a similar vein, like, okay, name the characters or the villains. Borg, Khan.
Hmm.
You know, so in that respect, from like a marketing perspective, let alone the story, which of course we'll get into, I think using Khan, and keeping it simple, Star Trek Khan,
Mm.
it stands out. It grabs attention.
Yeah, and I think you're tying it to because I know somebody was talking about like the Star Trek Year One idea, and kind of we don't need a
Mm,
remake of TOS. We don't need to see this, and I do agree, but I also think, you know, if we want the franchise to continue and to continue to grow and to grow with new viewers, it's very hard to get them to sit down and watch TOS, and not necessarily, you know, even if you kind of say, no, you know, of course it's a product of time, it's a product of its time, it's filmed this was very progressive for the time, and etc. etc. But it's not even that. For some people, it's just like it just looks cheap, it just looks old, it doesn't look, you know, and that will be enough. You could get them to watch some of the movies, and you could definitely
yes.
get them to watch Wrath of Khan. It's gonna, but like, I mean, I did it recently with my wife. I was like, we're gonna watch Wrath, because she's seen Next Gen, DS9, Voyager, and a lot of the new stuff. She never watched the original series, and I don't think she'd watched the movies. So I was like, "Oh, we're going to watch Wrath of Khan," but before we watch that, we're going to watch Space Seed, just so you understand.
Mm,
But that's quite hard to do, and I quite like that. There's, you know, you could show someone Wrath of Khan, or even be like, "Oh, well, before you see this, if you want to know a little bit about this character," because you kind of get the backstory of Space Seed delivered in bits and
mm.
pieces enough to then understand why he feels the way he does about Kirk, without having to say, right, we need to go and watch this episode of a show that you, because my fear is always you try to show them that, and then they don't want to watch Wrath of Khan because they're kind of like, oh, I didn't really enjoy the old Star Trek, and you're like,
I, it is. I know what you mean, because, like, you know, because I think so many people within the audience have different experiences.
mm,
I watched original series when I was a kid, so
yeah,
not only have I seen it, of course, but there's, you know, is there a bit of nostalgia glasses? Yes, there is. So, you know, I don't come to the original series now as a first time
no,
viewer. And in 2025, television is made so differently from the way it was in the 60s. I mean, these are 50-minute episodes, which, you know, you have your couple of, the act ends, ad break, or whatever. But I like a lot of the original series now can play as almost stage plays in the way the cameras are positioned. It's like a single
mhm,
camera show. You know, it is quite static. There are long takes. There are nowhere near as much music as we get in television today, and it's a very different type of experience. So, you know, we say to someone, okay, day one, here is Space Seed. You know, what do you think? Great. And now we're going to watch the movie. And I would not blame someone who goes, "Oh, we're going to watch a feature length version of that." You know, and not that Space Seed is bad, but again, it is a very different type of experience. Even The Wrath of Khan, you know, the fact that it's cinematic, so there's one difference straight away, but also completely, I mean, it was 20 years later, you know, like that, things had changed along the way, multi-camera setups, James Horner,
mm,
and just so much about the scale is different, which is why as well, I know I'm kind of monologuing at this point, but it's why, like, when you say, okay, we're going to show you the movies, let's start with Khan. I will defend the motion picture to my dying day, but it's a hard sell to start someone's movie journey with the Star Trek movies with the motion picture, because as wonderful and beautiful and stunning as it is low on action.
Hmm.
Whereas Wrath of Khan, I think it hits a lot of those. It does get the existentialism, it does get the adventure, and it kind of, it's more movie-esque. That's a terrible description, Sean. Than say the motion picture is, and and yet even those are so different. And then yes, time goes on, and I'm going to stop talking now because I'm
Well,
monologuing.
I had recently watched the motion picture, so I wasn't really in the mood to to be like, let's watch that again so soon.
You had done your annual sit through.
And I would have got in trouble because I was quite tired when we put on Wrath of Khan, and I fell asleep halfway through. My wife was also very tired, but she hadn't seen it before, so she stayed awake and watched the whole thing. And then she was quite angry with me because she's like, I'd wanted a nap, but you said let's watch this movie, and then you fell asleep, and I had to watch the whole movie.
But isn't she happy she's
Yes,
seen it?
exactly.
No.
And then she was like, oh, so what happened was, they shut me down onto the planet? What's going on? I was like, just
Come
you
back to
wait.
me now.
Just you wait.
Yeah.
Let's have a look. Yeah. Very good. Okay. I like that. I also think you're right with setting it. I mean, the easy thing to do is just like, here's an episode of Star Trek. We'll just do everything you're used to in Star Trek, and we'll do that as an audio format. But going to your point of it kind of being an experiment for them, it gives them a little bit of a sandbox, well, quite literally with City Alpha 5, a little bit of a sandbox to play in that, you're not going to have loads of ships turning up, and you're not going to have a massive space battle going on around you, and you're not going to have things that they might struggle to, not that you can't do it, but they might just sort of struggle to convey what's happening purely over audio in this. Whereas here it can be a little bit more stories about people. It's contained. There's not as much stuff going on, and then they split the timelines at the time. Yeah, not timelines, but you know what I mean. What am I saying? Time. I was going to say time zones, and I also don't mean that. I mean time periods. Yeah. Oh dear. This is because we're in different time zones. This was throwing me off.
That's what it is. That's literally what it is. Like, I'm speaking to you from the past.
Yes.
So yeah.
And
So,
and the Kelvin verse, which is strange. So yeah, first guest to do that, but I appreciate it. Okay, it's hard. Well, by the time this comes out, I'm hoping most people that, I think if you really care about spoilers and you want to hear it, you've had plenty of time to listen to it by now. But if you haven't, because let me put this out there, then ask your opinion on this, because I kind of each week would just do a little snapshot of on my phone of the as I was listening to it, and put up a little comment kind of, and particularly the last 3 or 4 were like, I think I know what's going on with Khan's daughter. I'm pretty sure I know what's going on here. And then eventually it was like, oh good, we were correct on that. But somebody had replied to one of them quite early on saying, I gave up. Like I listened to the first one or the first 2, and then I gave up because it didn't, and I think they said something like it didn't feel like it fit with the Khan I know and the Khan I perceive.
okay.
So if that person is listening, or someone else is listening who's like, I gave it 1 or 2, or I did the classic anime, I gave it 3 episodes and it didn't stick with me. Is it worth persevering? Did you feel like you need to hit everything to get it?
So that is right. So I'm going to open by saying I am biased. I will always say everything is worth persevering. Okay, so I'm going to just say that in the beginning. That's my stance. But to be specific, I went in with a fairly big question, which was, they talked about, there's a phrase that stuck out in the marketing, which was benevolent dictator. In describing Khan. And I've spoken to people, they left at that point. They were like, I don't need this story. I don't need to humanize the word dictator, let alone the Khan of it all.
Mm-hmm.
And I have sympathy for that, because that is, on the one hand, that was a choice, and on the other hand, you have, when you have iconic villains, offering more context can sometimes weaken them. Can sometimes go like, oh, like, I say this with love and respect. Is there anything left to discover about the Borg?
Right. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, and it's not that it's I certain I loved for I know some people hated the idea of a Borg queen. I just thought Alice Krieg
Mm-hmm.
absolutely nailed it in First Contact. And but it did, in fairness, take away from that unstoppable, homogenous collective idea. So I get why people didn't like that. To bring it back to Khan, then, do I think this was a worthwhile thing? I think yes, and I think it took the 9 episodes to get there. There was, because to the people who listened to episodes 1 and 2, and I mean, look, I'm very guilty of watching a series and thinking by episode 3, I'm really annoyed. Like, where is this going? And in the back of my head, saying, Sean, reveals are a thing.
Yep.
You know that like journeys are a thing, and you know that if you're given all the information in episode 1, why would you watch episode 2? And yet, I still get frustrated. And there was frustration in Cannes. Like, there was bits where I think, yeah, as I say, we've done, spoiler warning, spoiler warning, spoiler warning. So, I mean, it's pretty flipping obvious, I'd say, by about episodes 4 or 5. It's like, so Lear is his daughter. We didn't know the exact details, but we kind of got that at
Mm-hmm.
least. And she is initially quite an unlikable character.
Yes.
I think there's a few downs for
Yeah.
Lear throughout it, and then I remembered the moment
Oh,
where
I'm
I
really
think it's
curious now, because I also know the moment. For me, I know the moment where I was like, okay, I'll allow it. I'll accept you as a
oh
person now. So I'm
oh.
curious to know if we have the same moment. Um,
So
I need to write it down
mine
somewhere.
was when she was presented with the log, and she goes, "Nope, fair enough, he didn't know."
That's it.
And
Yeah.
you know what?
She was
Brilliant. Okay, I
so
love
against Kirk, from like, it was just like, Kirk is evil, Kirk is the worst, Kirk is terrible. We saw a kind of glimmer when they would mention Spock, and she was a bit like, "Ooh, it's hard for me to challenge Spock, but still, Kirk, this guy." And as soon as it was like, look, here's the evidence, absolutely, Kirk didn't do anything wrong, she just accepted that. And not only did she accept it, she proactively sent off, information to show that what I thought, what I was, at the first episode, what I was really calling them out for was wrong. And I
Mm.
was like, okay, that's okay.
Yeah,
You get a pass. Well done.
it's like, great, and here is a character who grows and goes from it's the difference, I think, between 2-dimensional and 3-dimensional depictions of characters. If, like, that's a critical moment. I'd say, let's say we took that out, but we still got the revelation that we got later on. I would say that's not a growth.
Yeah.
That's just discovering more, that we didn't know before. That moment is pivotal,
Mm-hmm.
because at least from that moment on, that either her motives have changed or her scope has expanded, which is, life happens, things, direction changes. So that was good. And it retroactively, when combined with I know I'm using the word revelation, but I'll come back to the word revelation in a second. But combined with the revelation, it's like, okay, overall, the character now comes across an awful lot better. I'm going to jump to the end again, so full spoilers, but the revelation, it wasn't a revelation. And that's what I love. It was Tuvok going, so you're clearly Kali, and she's like, you figured it out.
Yeah.
As opposed to, le gasp! Dramatic music. Oh my god! It's like, no, of course she is,
Yeah.
and that's how it's treated, which I really liked.
So the Tuvok stuff, it's funny because this, again, because we're recording things out of sync, and things are being released later, and people will have heard an episode that you couldn't possibly have heard yet. But the last episode I recorded, I go on a whole rant about how I think Tuvok is the best Vulcan in Starfleet, and I'm putting him above Spock. I'm sorry, everyone. And going back to TOS, because I have watched TOS, do we forget that he just, forget? Like, he just deletes a person from Kirk's memory, and we're okay with that. That's fine. Like, I like Spock. Spock does a lot of good, but come on, let's. But Tuvok, in this, he's great. Like, he's
Yeah.
great in everything, but in this, he steals the show at the end with kind of the way he reacts to things, the way he handles it, and yeah, and even going back to that revelation, like, he's worked out more than her,
Mm.
which doesn't. I don't think it diminishes what she's done, because she is approaching it from a very different way than he is. But we also know this is a Tuvok who, later is able to embed himself in the Marquis, does everything. What I loved about Tuvok on Voyager was, Worf, as this big kind of, Worf's a bouncer, right? Like, he's a warrior,
Yeah.
and Tuvok's a detective. You could see, like,
Yes.
CIS Delta Quadrant, and he's like, he's there, like, that's great, and I kind of, this plays to his strengths, and they got that, which I think was really good.
I completely agree. I think of the novelty of George Takei reprising the role as Sulu and Tim Russ reprising the role of Tuvok, I think there's two very different inspirations behind it. George Takei is a part of this because what a wonderful way to honor the 60th anniversary. Isn't it amazing that George Takei has reprised the role of Sulu? And, this is fantastic and set in the Excelsior. And novelty.
Yeah, and
Tuvok's a
also
character.
gives you a direct link to Space Seed and Wrath of Khan.
He was there exactly of everyone who is in this series, of the performers. He was there, and that to me is fun, and that's how I would describe Sulu's inclusion in Star Trek canon. This is not the Captain Sulu spin-off series that has been talked about for years, nor does it try to be, which I think is an important distinction to make. I think Tuvok is, while a supporting character, a pretty integral supporting character. He's not in every episode, but like you say, the bits that he's in are so plot centric, and particularly that denouement. I really do like that. And also, I love a bit like, every week, ooh, what are the Borg up to this week? It's like, all right, so we're back to the problem with genetic engineering. It's because poor old Star Trek has tied itself into absolute knots with the problem with genetic engineering because it keeps hopping across time periods.
Yeah.
But I love that, Tuvok makes a point of this, because I don't think generally they touched on genetic engineering in Voyager.
No.
They did obviously in Deep Space Nine, and they did in Enterprise, but not so much in Voyager, which means you can have Tuvok say, I will advocate for the rights of augmented people, without, it does nothing to contradict anything we later know about Tuvok's character.
He's like, at least I would have, but I was stuck in the Delta Quadrant.
Exactly. I advocated for the rights of anyone on the crew augmented. Yeah, you. Do you need? Yeah, there you go. Now.
I quite liked that he sort of basically said it's kind of like this human problem. It was, and almost like, she was like, oh well, now like, obviously you view me in a different way, and everyone views me in a different way, and he kind of was a bit like, this is a human issue, guys. Like, on Vulcan, we don't have this problem. I mean, we had a different problem where we splintered off into a separate planet and species, and all this. But technically, but yeah, augments. No, we were fine with that. So yeah, I'm gonna ask you some questions about the other side of things now, because we'll just put a pin in Khan for now. People go and listen to it. It's all out. You can listen to the whole thing. Yes, and and if you want more in-depth talk about the music and the the soundscape and the direction and all of that, head over to TrekCulture. They did all of that. They've got all of that. You can still listen to Sean say it all. He doesn't need to repeat himself here. But you talked about it being an experiment, and the idea that this could potentially birth more And I need to keep saying official because there is some fantastic Star Trek audio dramas that are fan
There
made.
really is.
Um, and I've listened to a lot of them. And I just sit here waiting for people to come on the show to recommend them. But if they don't, I'll have to do it myself. But yeah, what do you? I mean, you who have an ear to the ground in the in the Trek community more so than me, what do you think could come down the line? Do you feel that this could spin off into not this spin off into something per se, but this concept spin off into more audio dramas? And if so, what do you think we might get? What do you hope we could get? What do you think would work well?
So it's a really good question. I think this is something that could take over from what the short trek started,
Mm-hmm.
because, like, brass tacks of it all, everything costs money, and like that's just, we've known that since time began, right? And things are only getting more expensive as
Mm-hmm.
time goes on. Because, as most people already know, this idea started as a 3-episode television mini-series. It was going to be, same idea, SETI Alpha 5 was going to be the name of it. It was Nicholas Meyer pitched the idea, and that's what it was going to be. This was around the time that Discovery was kind of finding its feet, that the short treks were a thing. And then, but it was only going to happen once one of the existent series came to an end. So, Discovery, Picard, and I think at that point, Lower Decks had at least been announced. And then we now know that, like, Strange New Worlds was in, at least
Mm-hmm.
pre-production. And I've since learned that Starfleet Academy has been a much longer gestation than even we were aware of it. So I don't know exactly when, but I do know that there's been talk of it for quite a long time. So Khan was always going to be after one of them came to an end. And so, and in that time, they obviously looked at it, they crunched the numbers and went, can we justify the expense of the sets, of all of the visual production that goes in with that, for a 3-episode series? And the answer just was
No.
no. When Discovery was initially pitched, again, a lot of people probably know this already, is that there was this idea of doing an anthology series. You do a 1 season, maybe it was going to be Sulu, and then you do another season, very like American Horror Story and
Yeah.
that sort of expansive franchise. And again, the question of who's building a set for 10 episodes? Who's letting it sit there, and kind of, it's going to cost so much money. An audio drama doesn't have that consideration. Now, it's not that it's free, it obviously isn't, but like, it doesn't have at least the millions and millions and millions that go into. I mean, how many times have we heard how much the atrium has cost for Starfleet Academy?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, the first line of, like, we've spent so much money. It's like, great, make sure it's a good show. And that at least is something that is lifted from the budget for an
Yeah.
audio drama, which means you can take that budget and go, William Shatner, what's your asking price? Or Patrick Stewart, what's your asking price? You have a little bit more in the coffers, that some things become a little bit more realistic. Also, we have a series set in the 2290s, because it's about 6 months after Generations,
Mm-hmm.
is the sort of wraparound story here. Because, a bit like Christmas Carol, Captain Kirk was dead to begin with. So Generations has happened. But it's Captain Hikaru Sulu of the USS Excelsior, and your mind will fill in the blanks.
Yeah.
Like, you can set it in any period of time that you want. Which brings me to the other question: is when or what would suit this well? Lost Era.
Mm.
In my heart of hearts, I don't think we're going to get a series on television set in the Lost Era. I would love it. I would love it. I would love it. And if it comes down, I love nothing more than to be wrong when I said something wasn't going to happen. So, like, no, I've no ego when it comes
Yeah.
to that. But in my heart of hearts, I don't think it's going to happen. I think Section 31 proved that we're not going to get something set in that time period. With an audio drama, you can absolutely do that. Your mind can picture the Monster Maroon. You can think of the Excelsior class, the Miranda class, the Ambassador class. You can do the story of the Enterprise C.
Yeah.
You can do anything that you can do. We have been shouting about the Flip and Tomed incident ever since, the book. I think is it Serpent Among the Ruins. I always get it. I usually off by a word, but the story of Harriman.
Hmm.
Or you go back even further. There's been a lot of discussion of this idea of Star Trek United, this possible follow on from Enterprise. But even Mike Sussman, who's been talking about this idea, which, as of the recording of this, sadly, it's not currently in production, but you never know. But even he says, like, what we will do is discuss. We'll go back. There's that between the second last episode of Enterprise and then the, if you want to acknowledge its existence or not, last episode of Enterprise, the Earth Romulan War. We never saw it. It's
Yeah.
never been depicted. You can do that in an audio way. Now, I do hear what you're saying about sometimes it could be hard to do like space battles. Like, oh look, there's the Defiant. I'll take your word for it. Like I get it. Like it
Yeah.
can be hard to do that, but
Yeah, but
I
it will work. But other people do it.
yes,
That's fair.
absolutely.
And I get that. And I think my thinking with Khan was, yeah, don't do it. Try it as your first one, because
Yes,
like
yeah.
first establish just having the concept of audio, and we're just going to listen and we'll fill in the blanks. And we've done that with the ship crashing and the ship taking off and the stuff exploding, and okay, right, we can visualize that. Right, so we can just expand out on that. And something like the Romulan War would cost so much money to film. You'd need
It really would.
all these ships, and these ships are blowing up, and things are flying off here and flying off there, and oh no, they've cloaked and now they've come back, and that is, I think that's the, and I mean, here's like a partial hot take on for you, because I know you like them, but like do feel that Star Trek animation was wasted a bit, because Lower Decks is great, but it's a comedy, it's a kind of
Hmm,
it's a silly thing. Like we enjoy it, but it is what it is. And Prodigy is great, but pitched to the wrong people, and so people ignored it because
absolutely
they were
pitched
like,
it.
"Oh, it's a kids show, right?" And they're like, "Well, actually, there's some pretty freaky stuff going on in there." Uh, and what I love about animation is, you don't have to have the actors sit in 6 hours of makeup, so you can have more aliens on the ships. You can have crazier looking ship. You can have, like the budget can just blow out because it costs as much to draw an alien person as it costs to draw a human person. So do what you want. And I think audio is even more so. We get these, like, Tim Russ is a great actor. I don't think he needed the ears while he was recording in the voice box, so it's probably fine.
I love just on that. I love that Armin Zimmerman brought the teeth when he recorded for Lower
Yeah.
Decks. He was like, he just popped the teeth in. He didn't need them, but
Oh, I don't know though. I think maybe that changes your.
it could have. It must change the shape of your
Yeah, because
mouth.
didn't they used to say that with like Michael Dorn, right? Like Worf couldn't get the words through the teeth sometimes. So maybe I'll give him, he can have that. If he'd gone in there with like massive ears, then I'd have said, how are you putting the headphones on? That would have been my question.
Kind of picturing that now as well. Yeah.
Yeah. But no, and I mean, I'd love like a lost. I just, it also feels a bit, I don't know, less risk to, because like, we mentioned some of like the fan production audio
Hmm.
dramas, and they're great, and they're new characters on a new ship, and it's not, it's like the TNG thing, right? It wasn't all linked to TOS, and then Deep Space Nine, they weren't all, and yeah, Worf moved across, but that happened seasons later. It wasn't like,
Hmm.
okay, Mars O'Brien, right? Apart from from Mars O'Brien, let's go to work. Well, Voyager then, in that case, completely different people.
Well, Mark
We
was
had
there
it.
in episode one. Well, Nick
Well, that's
Lucarno.
true.
Oh, I mean, oh.
Don't know what you're talking about. You can't pay that guy to be a returning character. You've got to have a new character. So yeah, we could just have a new crew. You have a new crew, a new ship, a new adventure. And actually, like this was, adapted from what was going to be a TV show and this and that. There are so, as we mentioned before, there's so many books, there's so many games, there's so many stories. Just pick one and say,
do you know?
let's do that.
Do you know what I would love, right? Because I know going back, I think before Strange New Worlds aired, there was all reports of trademarked titles for a series, and my heart when Star Trek Coda was trademarked by Sigurd Heide, because I thought, are we getting a series of the Coda books? Because oh my goodness, At this stage, I don't think we are. Coda would lend itself very, very well, I think, to something like this. Plus, the other thing as well is that you can do these amazing, massive crossover events without having to go, how on earth are we going to get Patrick Stewart, Kate Mulgrew, oh, yeah, like in Coda. Okay, this is the opening scene of Coda, so it's not. I don't think it's a spoiler. Terry Farrell. How are we going to get all of these people together at the same time? You just can't. Like in this day and age, to try and do that is bonkers scheduling. Or, obviously, allowing time for rehearsal. Of course, I'm just like, Patrick. By any chance, do you have an hour free on Thursday?
Yeah.
Is a very different way of putting together a massive crossover event which could celebrate all of the franchise from flipping the Cage right up to today. You could have something like that and still, vaguely keep the cost down to make it
Yeah.
more attractive for the people up there. I realize, as we're talking about this, the Ellison family has more money than God. Like, I know, like, in fairness, when it comes to money, maybe it's not as much of a thing. But then at the same time, they seem to care. The people who have the most money seem to care the most about money. So if
Yes.
it's about pitching something
Yeah.
that is
That
affordable,
that's how they still have the most money.
there is a little. I love that scene of The Simpsons. I didn't get money rich by writing a bunch of checks. Buy him out, boys. Sorry, random. But like something like that is you can pitch right. This is probably gonna be for one diehard fans. If I just go with the code idea, go for diehard fans, but also if you manage to find a way to include actor, I know people who started watching Strange New Worlds because they were Vampire Diaries fans because they knew Paul Wesley.
Wow.
So you know what I mean? Like it's like, oh, okay, I know that actor. I'll give it a go because that actor's in it. Things like that. I think is a great way of just bringing more and more people in. Because as you said earlier on, if Star Trek is to continue and it is to evolve and it is to grow, it needs to grow. I think it always sounds really bad when I say this, but a lot of Trekkies we're aging out. You know what I mean? Obviously, I'm very, very young and will always
And
be young.
me too.
But like, I mean, look at you. You're what, 17, 18 tops.
Got you.
Um,
Sounds wonderful.
but like, we do. We're aging, and Prodigy was a brilliant attempt at opening up to a younger audience, and unfortunately, yet just
Yeah.
blame can be put on so many different people for that one. Not on the creators, I will say that the creators of the show. I mean, the show is fabulous. It's one of the best shows that flip all people watched. You know, Star Trek Scouts with my love and my heart. It might work that in 10 years or longer, the people who watch Star Trek Scouts now might, kind of say, "Oh, well, what is this Lower Decks? What is this?" Prodigy that someone has found in a shelf somewhere because
Yeah.
you have to get it on hard disk to actually watch it, and that's how franchising. You do need to get the younger crowd. You do, but there has to be a reason. It can't just be like, "Ooh, here's my set of keys, shiny." Ooh,
Mhm.
there has to be a reason for them to come in. And yeah, I do love an album monologue, Jason. I'm very,
Yeah.
very sorry.
Well, I also think with the audio, what I love about and I say this, with all the love for all the different podcasts that are out there as well. And I realize you all want me to watch your YouTube videos because they're monetized and the more views is one of them. However, I'm busy, and whenever I discover a new podcast that I want to listen to, the first thing I do is I stick it in my podcast app, and I'm like, is there an audio version I can just listen to while I'm working, while I'm doing other stuff? And they'll be the ones I get first because it's hard to commit to sitting down and watching something, and that
It really is.
goes for obviously podcasts like this one, by the way, available on Spotify and all those places as well. But but also for
For
TV
the purposes
shows.
of audio, I just thumbs up.
Yeah, but also for TV shows, right? Like, there's so much competition now. There's so many things. So having more opportunities for people to come in, we've mentioned there's so many books, there's so many, but like audio is just people like they're used to now, on their phone they've got Audible, they've got whatever, they've got access to different podcatchers on a bus, on a train, whatever it is, however they're going. They're not there reading books anymore. They're scrolling on their phone, and maybe at the same time they can be listening to a podcast, or they can do it while they're working or cycling or whatever. I don't know, whatever these people do these days. Whatever it is they're doing, they can listen to it, and that can be their into Star Trek, even if it's just a new crew, a new ship, a new thing, or if it's tying into something and then like, oh, did you like that story with, Ensign Tuvok? Do you know what happened to him? You are not going to believe this. Let me introduce you to a Voyager.
Wow, they've made a spin-off series from Star Trek.
Yeah,
Yeah. They've
yeah,
just made one. It's brand new.
yes.
Yep.
Now, people will try and tell you that Janeway's the main character, but, you know, Tuvok, he's always there in the background, the same way Sulu, he was the captain. Was he the main character? No. So Voyager was a vehicle for Tuvok, but,
Everyone knows
oh,
Cass is the main character anyway.
oh, yes, yeah. And she was always there. She was hiding in the background, even when she disappeared.
You know,
Wonderful.
like a good writer could make that work.
Yes, that's the next audiobook. The next audio play is The Journeys of Kess. What happened between her showing up again? Oh no, please don't do it. If I have any power. Right. Sure. Well, thank you so much for your recommendation and, the specific one and the larger scope of audio dramas. You've really hit on something that is close to my heart. So I appreciate that. You've also mentioned multiple other recent recommendations that have come up as well. For example, Star Trek Coda, that was not that long ago recommended as well. So, and what is nice is I realized this show has backfired in one pretty major way, in that it is costing me more money than I expected, because people keep coming on and telling me about stuff that's really good, and then we end the episode and I jump on eBay and buy it. Uh, I'm not going to have to spend any money today, so that's great. That's another really positive thing. I do always like to give the guest, and this I think will be tricky for you, but I give the guest an opportunity to ask the wider audience if there's anything within the Star Trek franchise that they haven't investigated as much as they would have liked to, and if they could receive a recommendation about anything. Oh, that was a long-winded way of putting that.
Um, do you know what? I have long since been exposed as someone who has next to no gaming knowledge. If there was, I mean, I know Star Trek Online. Obviously, it's been going for a long time. I know there are great games. If someone could be like, Sean, sit down, shut up, and play X, what would be a great place to start?
Okay. So, episode 2 of this show recommended Star Trek Resurgence. Um, that's good if you're a casual gamer. That's probably really good, because it is like just a big long episode of Star Trek. You control two characters. One is the XO, one is a lower decker. It switches between them and the different things they're doing in the story, and it is a like decision tree thing where this is going to happen. What is your choice? And depending on the choices you make, different things will happen, and the result at the end will be different depending on that. And what I really love is at the very very end, when you finish it, you get like, it will tell you the percentage of people that made certain choices, and you can be
Oh
like,
no,
oh, not, and you're like, oh, only 2% of people decided to do this quite clearly evil thing that I decided to do. That's strange. So yeah, that's a good one, but it's quite slow paced and it's a little glitchy at times, but hey, what can we expect? I'm still, that's maybe one of the best things about the new Lego, like the fact that Star Trek is now getting Lego, is you could get a Star Trek Lego game, and that could
oh.
that could open up. I don't really like the Lego games very much because I'm an old man now, and they make me feel a bit sick when I play them. As I tell my children when they say, "Let's play Lego," I was like, ooh. But you know, I'd make it work for Star Trek.
Yeah. For Star Trek, you'll make it work.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Sean. Now, if people have enjoyed listening to you here, where else can they find you? Have you got anything specific coming up in this month of December, apparently?
In this month of good point there. Okay, well, I'm easy to find. You find TrekCulture is online. We're on all the various socials. We're TrekCulture YT on Instagram because somebody was really quick in ahead of them, and you know what, fair play. Again, we're on YouTube. We're on all the podcast catchers, and then I'm just at Sean Ferrick on everything as well. December, we have our end of the year wrap ups coming up. We will bring sort of here's what 2025 was in through the lens of Star Trek and what we can look forward to in 2026, because like January 15th, Star Trek Starfleet Academy starts airing, so that's coming. But also,
So soon, yeah.
Star Trek is about to turn 60. So I have a feeling I won't be sleeping very much between January the 1st and December 31st of 2026. Which, Jason, you'll know this. We're content creators. What is
What
sleep?
is sleep? There you go. Yeah. You thought the 59th year was bad. Wait until the 60th. Yeah. I'm quite glad I launched this show on Star Trek Day a few months ago, which
Brilliant.
means like the 1 year anniversary will be Star Trek Day of the 60th anniversary. Like that's something good should happen there, right? Something big and special. Who knows? I've got time. I got time to plan something.
Be grand.
I'll
Grand.
be
Be
fine.
fine.
I'll
Be
be
grand.
fine. Yeah. Any recommendations on what I should plan? People, let me know. Very good. Well, thank you once again to the fabulous, wonderful Sean Ferrick. Thank you everyone for watching or listening. If you can do all the things we always ask you to do, subscribe, leave a comment, like it, do a review, whatever helps, kind of get the show somewhere in a list when people search Star Trek content. That would be great. Thank you once again to everyone, including you, Sean, most of all you, Sean, for this episode. That's all from me, but I will be back next week with another guest and another Trekommendation.